Hello,
Alrighty.
and that was the thing you weren't supposed to do, Brian.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, and welcome everyone to this week's Collective Imagination Show. Brian Kelly from Morocco and Cullen Smith from Texas will be joining us, and we're going to talk quite a lot about language, the etymology of language, the effect of language on our collective consciousness, language as spells. And this is it's a really, really, really interesting subject. I mean, a lot of people who've gone down many of these conspiracy rabbit holes have probably heard that the English language is backwards. And for those of you who've gone down the law route, we absolutely have come across the knowledge that the word understand means to stand under. And there's a classic example of a word being backwards. And, we would never use that word in the context that we use it in if it was used in the legal sense. We would always use the word comprehend, or perhaps, or something else. So what is the effect of using these words when we use them for one intent and purpose, with one understanding of its meaning? The legal and legalese world have a completely different one. And then there may, in fact, be a third with the energetic intent when the word was formed. So there's a lot to talk about. But first things first, welcome Brian. So Cullen, thanks for joining us. It's late notice, I know. I appreciate you making yourself available to have this conversation with us.
Of course, it's always a pleasure to discuss language, etymology, breakdown, or actually to discuss language, to discuss, to undo a curse. So that is what we do. And when we have a discussion, we are talking about the discus, which comes from the zodiac, as in the zodiac wheel, the discus.
Mm-hmm.
So just a little drop of.
So what got you started down this etymological path?
That's a good question. It was basically about not very long ago. I've only been so-called, like, quote unquote awakened for like 2 years now, and I don't know, I just like took off on the path. Like I became aware of certain things, and I just like took it and run with it. And same with everything. Like when something comes to my awareness, I dig deep. I immerse myself in it, and especially language and etymology and symbolism also being one of those things. And I don't know, it just really resonated with me. The source for me becoming aware of all these things was from a very good I want to consider him like a mentor, but I don't really know him personally. Christopher Lord. He runs a YouTube channel called Trutheracy, and he also has a blog called trutheracy3.blogspot.com. And his sort of way of teaching is Trutheracy House of Wisdom. He's the first one who I really came across doing language etymology and also symbolism, and combining mythology with theologies and etymologies and all these different areas of science, and combining them all together and drawing a bigger picture from that. And then from there, I also realized that Jordan Maxwell was one of the first people to really come out in the open, exposing a lot of the cons about language, legalese, the whole system at large, combining the different languages and seeing how they all have root meanings, in being in the phonics, meaning the sound. So it doesn't matter, what the definitions are of these words. Ultimately, they all have the same vibrational resonance, the same vibrational frequency, and that's ultimately what really matters. That's the ultimate definition of it, is the actual vibratory signature in itself. And of course, it doesn't matter what language we're speaking; they all boil down to just specific phonetic sounds. And so that's how all languages are actually all rooted in the same origins, regardless of location, time, or space. They all have root origins being in the sound, in the phonics, in the phonetics of it. And of course, the word phone literally means voice, speech. So it's referring to the sound. So that's basically what got me into all of this. And I just started diving into it, and every word that would come up into my mind, I would just go look it up. And I go and look up the etymology of it. And you just start to, see how, like, everything, all of our modern common perceptions of what a word is usually completely, a lot of times completely the opposite of where it originated from. And so etymology is the study of the true sense. Etym meaning true, and etym meaning true sense, and ology obviously comes from logos, or the logi, which in Greek is logia, meaning the study of. So it's the study of the true sense of where things come from and how they evolve over time, which of course is what we're all doing, on a global scale in so many different areas. We're seeing where we come from and, how we've evolved over time, and therefore we can get a greater understanding of where that's taking us, where we are going. And now we can do it consciously rather than just, being led, being, like the Pied Piper leading the blind mice, now we have control, we have sight over, where we can choose to go on this path.
Brian, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, wow, what a perfect person to bring on for this show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To me, it's I think the most amazing thing about the topic of discussion for tonight is you live your whole life and you don't even think about it. You learn the spoken language, and what point in school do they tell you, okay, well, this word means this, and it was designed to, you hear definitions of words, but you never really think about the origination of the word and the etymology of the word. And I love the fact that, Colin, the way that you kind of shared how this thing became conscious to you, then you realize, well, wait a second, you got a little taste, and then you just ran after it. Because it's the digging that, in the process of the digging, that the clarity comes. And I've realized, some of the stuff in the Great Con of Man that Lisa put out on the One Network, a lot of that stuff was I had heard before. And Lisa, I was trying to remember the guy, who was the Postmaster General guy that came out sometime in 2013, and he did all those YouTube videos on language. And
yes.
We talked about him. You remember, what was that guy's name?
Yeah, my mind's gone blank, but I know exactly who you're talking about, the Postmaster General.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I actually went to the States and met the man. And yet my mind's gone blank.
Total vibe.
Sorry?
Yeah, he kind of a creepy vibe. He admitted being like a 98th degree Mason in his videos.
Oh, hang on, I know who you're talking about now. No, that's not the same one then.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Also, he did if it's the guy I'm thinking of, I heard. This is obviously hearsay. I didn't actually look into it myself, but I hear he was actually. He kind of like dropped off the record or something for a while, and no one's really heard much of him since. But yeah, when you said like something 93rd degree Mason, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know who you're talking about. I've shared one of his presentations, and I also got a lot of feedback from a lot of my trusted sources that say, he wasn't all it's cracked up to be, or something like that. But I don't know. That's just hearsay from my end.
It's funny. We've just brought up two different men, and I can't that I know both very well, and I can't remember either of their names. So that's
I'll
embarrassing.
do video and share the links when we put up the show. We already have quite a few links backing up in the chat room, but this is a really funny subject matter because you try to pull any Tom, Dick, or Harry off the street and tell them that the English language and most languages in creation are designed as spells. They're gonna look at you like you're the craziest person in the world. But then you look and you start to dig into the research and you start to lay out as the information is laid out before you. You look at it and you realize, how could you negate this stuff? I mean, it's almost, especially in reading The Great Con of Man, you look at it and you go, this stuff just makes sense. And it's a hard thing. I think it's going to be a hard thing for a lot of people to grasp because it is so far out left field. Because unless this has been brought to your attention, it's just this kind of information isn't really widely available unless you know where to look. So it's important we talk about this because so many people, think about it, when we speak, you know, I loved in The Great Con of Man, they say that, you know, one of our greatest limitations is that we have to speak in order to be able to communicate with one another. That when we tap into that level of our consciousness that allows for us to be telepathic, we get rid of all the spells through language because we communicate with each other through pictures and kind of like visions that we kind of transport back and forth to one another. And when you use language, you really kind of bastardize what it is that you're really trying to impart upon another. And that's what makes this really interesting because the rabbit hole does go very deep. I mean, you think about all the things that they train judges with and police and lawyers and legalese. I mean, you name it, the whole system has been hijacked. And just having that communication that we had with Lily Earth a few days ago, when she said, you know, the English language was by far the most corrupted, you really have to sit back and think about the level of creativity and craftsmanship behind, you know, how thick the veil of illusion that's been pulled over the language really is.
Oh, I think sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Back in the 70s, during the feminist movement, there was a powerful woman, Mary Daly, who was also an etymologist. And at that time, she was really leading us in examining the words. But what at the time, the focus was the patriarchal language. And so she was the one who introduced beginning to respell words like woman. When you've seen W-O-M-O-N or W-O-M-Y-N. And basically the approach was that you're not woman of man, woe man. And so there is a whole culture that was actually that actually developed and started to change language. And that's why even in my name, my full name, Blue Star Deerwoman, it's spelled with the W-O-M-O-N. And you've probably heard me or seen me write. I use words like femifest instead of manifest. So there was a movement, but it was approaching it as a patriarchal, oppressive language usage.
I think part of the problem with addressing a subject like this is that it just seems so big to do anything about. You know, the English language is the prominent language on the planet. I mean, even for those who don't have English as their first language, if you're going to learn a second language, for the most part, it's English. It's so widely used, it's so ingrained, and it doesn't feel like there's anything we could do about that. Like it's a huge, huge issue to try and tackle. And I'm not surprised to find that there might be a sort of underground counterculture attempts at doing things like that, like you've mentioned, Blue. But getting something like that to take on or take off in a more mainstream way, I just think would be virtually impossible. But if what you're saying, Cullen, is that it's not necessarily the way, I mean, there's power in all aspects of it, I guess, but it's not necessarily the order in which letters are put together or the root etymology or the intent when the words were constructed. It's the vibration of the sound that's of the utmost importance. Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah, exactly. And as you sort of illuminated right there, whether you realized you did it or not, you said, how do we, how do we put on these, this message, or how do we, how do we put it on or put it off? So what you said there was a contradiction within the language itself, on or off. We turn things on, and we also turn things off. And within the language itself, within words, every word, and what spelling is when we write a word, our language consists of an alphabet. All languages have an alphabet in order to exist. And so to get to the roots of language and where it comes from, we have to get to the roots of what that language is composed of, which is an alphabet. All languages have an alphabet, so when we get to the roots of that, it comes almost all modern alphabets, at least in Western culture, come from ancient Phoenician, which was the origins. Or I also have a good friend who made me aware that possibly ancient Greek goes back before Phoenician, but whether which one came first isn't necessarily the topic here. But what I wanted to get into was that every letter, every sound, every symbol all have opposing polarities to it. Everything in language, everything in this reality has a contradicting, opposing, a sort of a paradoxical understanding contained within it. And this is when you really start to dive deeper into this, that really becomes clear. Because regardless of what you discover, or regardless of what you discover, meaning to uncover, dis meaning away from, to undo, and cover, to cover, to hide. So you break down these words, they're all compound. English consists of compound words, and so when you break apart those compound words, you see that they're made of multiple root words or parent words that come together to have, that come together to form a new word. Or you have the antithesis and you have the thesis that come together to form the synthesis. So all of these concepts within words and alphabets it can be broken down to the most basic level. And when you start to break them down, you'll see that it all counter opposes itself. It's a paradox. It's a contradiction. And I've put together some brief posts about that called, it's a dimensions. These are dimensions of contradiction. And when you break down the word dimension, you have di, which means two, and mention, meaning it's like, well, I'm mentioning it. So we're speaking about the duality. We're speaking about these contradictions, and contra meaning to counter, to oppose, and diction meaning speech. So it is counter speech. It is what in modern times is known as double speak, meaning you can say something, but the implication behind it is completely the opposite of what we're saying. Like, for example, well, you know what they say about guys with big feet? It obviously we're not talking about their feet. So that's what I mean. There are hidden implications within the very words and the concepts themselves. So yeah, I mean, it just goes.
Well, I got a for you, Colin, if I may.
Yeah.
For someone that's hearing about this information for the first time, and they're realizing that unconsciously they've been communicating vibratory patterns that they were unaware of, unbeknownst to them, because of a lack of available data or information in regards to this subject matter. If somebody doesn't necessarily have the energy to dive in as much as you have to really be able to, and I'm going to avoid using the word understand because I know what it means now, to comprehend, and I don't know what that word means, the etymology of it. But if somebody wants to cancel out a vibratory message that they may have imparted that is counter to what their intention was, is there a way to creatively use the language to cancel out that which we do not want to create, just simply as a result of lack of information? I mean, what can we consciously do or make steps in the direction of in order to be able to, because obviously there's so much going on in the language that we use, and we're putting out all these vibratory patterns. How can we have more control over that which we're putting out without studying the etymology of it all?
Of course, yeah, exactly. Well, that's ultimately, the situation that we find ourselves in, as a whole, as a species, is, how do we take this information once we become aware of it, and where do we go from here? And Laurel Erica, also a great sort of a mentor of mine, she's been doing this, since she can remember. It's just like her life's path was, always being interested in definitions, in language itself, in poetry, and so ultimately, yes, it is about intention. Ultimately, the intention behind things is what holds the true power. But obviously, when we're unaware of these things and it operates from the unconscious level, that is going to get us results that we are unaware of. So obviously, that's going to generate things that we don't necessarily intend to be that way. So I would say, so that's really the challenge that we all have, that we all face right now, and that's why I feel it's so important to have these discussions, to have these understandings, and because we each have our own specific background, depending on all the things we've seen and we've learned and we've picked up along our own journey. And so we each hold a unique vibratory, signature, so to speak. We're all born in a specific time and place that holds its own signature. So each of us is a vital piece, to building this bigger picture, to putting this puzzle together, to sort of see where we can go from here. And I would say that the best way to control, to take command of the language, to take command of our own sovereignty, of our own intentions, is to basically first become, awareness is key. Awareness basically changes. It takes becoming aware of something, takes it from the unconscious and immediately brings it out to the surface into the light of the conscious awareness. It's focusing that intention which holds true power. And while it's in the unconscious, being when we're unaware of it, it holds power over us. And this is where, sort of where the real power of understanding comes from. Because yes, in legal terms, understanding means to stand under authority, but in terms of wisdom, to understand comes from it comes from standing under the tree of knowledge. So we go under the wise dome. We stand under the wisdom of the wise dome, which is why we go into temples, which is why we go into churches, which is why we seek the enlightenment within entheogenic plants, within visionary plants, such as mushrooms, for example. The dome, the wise dome of enlightenment. So to gain understanding, meaning to gain a new perspective, to see things from a totally new point of view, we go and we stand under the wisdom, which comes from the tree of knowledge. And so that's essentially where these things come from. Is to understand means to stand under, to stand under this wisdom. And once we gain that new perspective, all of a sudden everything changes. With our awareness comes the change that we are striving for, that we are seeking.
Are you saying that we can essentially break the spells created by the phonics of the language with a conscious intent that our words and our sounds that are being produced carry our own personal intent?
Yes, exactly, so to speak. And it goes back to energetics, where you'll, especially in the light worker community and a lot of the new age, quote unquote, communities, are always speaking about, I felt negative energy there. I felt, this person has negative energy. And I am like the subject. I get a lot of this directed towards me, especially for what, the type of research and the type of work that I do. A lot of people don't see me as a light worker, like especially people that I'm very close with. They'll call me like a shadow worker or whatever. Well, okay, how are we going to become aware of things if we're, not looking into the dark to find where it, to shine light into it, but so anyways, So yeah, there's ultimately, all things are neutral, especially, words, sounds, frequencies, and vibrations. It's all, and information. All of these things are just information. Information means information, meaning like things have more power when they are in formation, when they are aligned. Yeah, exactly. When they are aligned, such as a school of fish. There's strength in numbers. So when we form our intentions together and align our intentions together, it holds that much more power. But ultimately, everything is inherently neutral until it passes through our own mind, through the prism, when that light of information, all information is light, and light is everything is light. Even the dark is a form, even darkness is the womb of creation where light penetrates in order to create things, to give birth to things. So all information is inherently neutral. When it passes through our own mind, it's refracted through the prism of our mind, which, through all of our own perceptions and all of these things. That's when it gets imprinted with an intent. That's when it gets imprinted with a polarity, either good, bad, positive, negative, light, dark, whatever those dualities are. So ultimately, everything is neutral until we give it our power, until we give it, the power that it holds over us. Like, for example, a single word, like the word cunt, it will mean a ton of different things. Pardon my language, if we're not allowed to, speak that on this radio show.
So I'm sure there's a couple of people picking themselves up off the floor, but you get.
So I have a point to make here about that word. Is it will see, when I say that, everyone will have a different reaction to that word. Like, depending on their background, if they've been abused, say if it's a woman and she's been abused throughout her life, she's going to be probably offended by hearing that word. Or if someone like myself, who is very humorous, has can see these things in a humorous light, and throws these words out like candy, and says them all over the place, because especially being someone in Australia or the UK, where the language is very, very strong and very potent, especially the the cursing is very strong, especially in Australia. I mean, people got filthy mouths over there, which that sailor talk. But
I'm not going to argue. I am blushing a little though.
So each one of these words can hold any number of meanings to depending on who we are and our backgrounds. But the origins of it, like the word cunt, is originally coming from the most sacred form of the most sacred representation of the goddess. It comes from every language, every culture has their own root words for the word cunt, and the word cunt is the only word in all of language that describes the entire female genitalia. Every other word is just describing a little part of it. This is the only word that describes the entire yoni, the entire goddess genitalia, which is the creative essence of life. So it ultimately, originally, it was the most complementary word that you could respectful term that you could call a woman. I mean, we all come from I believe it was Sumerian. It comes from so many different roots, like kunta, kunti, kunda, kundi. In every language, it has its own roots for it, and they are all very sacred.
My children had a school teacher. She was Indian when they were going to a Montessori sort of primary school, and her first name was Kunti. So
really?
You can imagine what that did to the classroom and to the school at large. And it was as a result of that I actually looked up the word back then in the day and found that women are still called that in India, and it's one of the most, as you said, respected. It's like one of my daughter's names is Rani, which is Indian for queen or princess, and it's on par with that, and in fact even more revered. So that trying to get the kids to talk to their teacher without giggling was another thing, though.
Well, this was one of the words that we reclaimed back in the 70s, and we recognized that it was a sacred symbol. And so in our reclamation of that word, began to re-include it in our conversations and recognition of one another. And a word that I had created back then, too, was when we were studying our spirituality, and you'd hear the popular word kundalini, we decided, I actually created the word and changed it to kuntalina, so that it was an explanation of our divine feminine and our spirituality.
Yes,
exactly. And one of the ways, just to go back a little bit with what you were, pardon? One of the things that I go back to also is when we were starting to change our language with each other and we're sharing that consciousness, what we found was the first place that we could change it that was more understandable to others was by changing the writing of the word, the spellings ourselves. And then it became familiar, and more and more women started to see that new vocabulary and started to choose that in our conversations. So like when we were asking, well, how do you bring this into the mainstream? Yes, there's intention, but you can also start just by writing, because you have enough time usually when you're writing a document to reconsider the words that you're choosing to use.
Exactly. That is so right on point, and that is exactly how we do it. One of the best ways is through writing, and obviously because we have the time to and the awareness to go back and sort of rethink what we've written or what we've we have the ability to to see these things from different perspectives. And like you said, the word kundalini, yes, and also that has that root origin of the kunda, which is the goddess. It's the kunt, and I just had this realization as you were saying that, was that in ancient times there's this archetype of the ancient serpent goddess, which was all of these mother cultures respected the goddess, and ultimately it was a matriarchy before it was a patriarchy, but ultimately right now it's still not even a patriarchy. There is still a matriarchy underlying that patriarchy that whether people choose to accept this or not, the patriarchy answers to the matriarchy. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it always will be. I mean, just look at the family unit. The husband can only do something with the consent of the wife. Hey, is that okay? And then she approves, and so yeah, the wife approves. So it's still a matriarchy. It's just most people are caught up in the illusion that it's a patriarchy. Although behind all of the patriarchy, there is behind every great man there is an equally great woman, and it's always been that way. It always will be that way. And so yeah, it goes back to the serpent goddess of ancient times, which is.
I should speak for yourself. I answer to no one.
Actually, this is a good time to mention an aside. Robert Morningsky's new book, The Lost History of Womankind, will explain a lot of what you just said, Cullen, about our history and matriarchy, and because he basically shows that all life is inherently female, and that life started on this planet as all female. Our female life forms were around for a couple of billion years before the male or the Y chromosome even showed up. And so for those who are interested in that line, you know, I highly recommend his book. It's The Lost History of Womankind. Sorry, just a side note.
It's a good side.
In mentioning Robert Morningsky, actually a stepping stone, what I introduced earlier, a stepping stone to really understanding and changing our language is perhaps to take the feminist perspective, to approach that first layer of just the obvious and blatant patriarchal creation of the words, and how we could maybe spiral that back to the reverence and the honor of the divine feminine.
And, also on another little side note, Michael Tazarian has his brand new series that he's working on right now is unraveling all of this, and also you know, the whole roots and origins of the feminism movement, and it's called the Female Illuminati, which he goes very deep into the symbolism and also the language and the etymology of all of these things. And his work is very controversial, especially to feminists, because I mean I'm not even going to explain why, but I mean it's great work, it's great research as well. So I would also highly recommend that aspect as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I have. I've interviewed Michael, and I've met him in person when he came here to Australia, and he's an incredibly interesting man. I'll give it that. I just wanted to go over a little bit more about the concept of words as spells, and I want to be really, really clear about this for myself. I do believe a spell has been cast over humanity at large for a very long time, and we are in the process of waking up from that spell. And the wake up rate is, you know, certainly exponential at this point. That cutting through the spell can be as simple as becoming aware and setting an intent to do so. Because I hate presenting a problem with no solutions, or pointing out the problem and not providing any solutions and leaving people hanging, myself included. So I wouldn't want anyone to come across this information and just go, oh my God, this is huge, how do we get out of this mess? Is it as simple as intent? And this is something I have to mention. Has anybody watched the new film from Disney or one of them, the Maleficent?
Haven't watched it, but I know all the symbolism all about it.
Okay. Well, I watched it on the plane on the way back to Australia, and I've watched it since I got here, because I just had this feeling that, oh my God, this film is full of messages. And for those who haven't seen it yet, it's a retelling of the Sleeping Beauty story, and it talks about two different realms, kingdoms, whatever you want to call them. One is of man, and man is full of greed, lust for power and position, ambition, and the other is the magical realm right next door, full of all the magical creatures, the fairies and the pixies and all kinds of magical creatures. And the two do not have anything to do with each other, because as far as the magical realm is concerned, they don't understand man's greed and lust for power and ambition. And the human world just wants to take control of that beautiful land, the moors, and control all of the magical creatures. So in amongst that is a fairy by the name of Maleficent, who casts a spell on a baby Aurora. And at the end of the spell, she says that, and I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember the exact words, but along the lines of, there is no magic on this world that can undo this spell. And then, as an afterthought, she adds, basically just to twist the knife into Stefan, the baby's father's heart, that true love's kiss is the only thing that will break the spell, with the firm belief that that such a thing doesn't exist, because she's had her heart broken by this man, and knowing that he doesn't believe it exists. So it was a very cruel twist. However, at the end of the film, it is Maleficent's own kiss to this young girl's forehead that breaks the spell. And I was looking at this from the perspective of, okay, let's play the us and them game. The humans are the humans, and the magic realm of the fairies and pixies are our, what we call, partners in contrast, who do have a somewhat condescending attitude towards their human neighbours, and that if that's the way to look at this film, then ultimately it is their love for us that is their own salvation. And because through the process of getting to know and love this little girl, her own heart heals. She heals. Everything about this character is reborn through her love for this little girl. And she ends up breaking her own spell through love. And I just looked at it from that perspective, and it kind of bolstered some of the dialogue that we've had over the last couple of years around seeing them as partners in contrast, seeing them as, in fact, assisting us in our own awakening by making our lives so incredibly uncomfortable and restrictive. It's like squeezing something. They're squeezing us so hard until we pop. And when we pop, we awaken to the reality of the situation that we're in. This is why, on the one hand, I'm concerned that over the next couple of years, things are actually going to get more and more and more uncomfortable until that last kernel of corn pops. But hopeful's not the word. With an underlying belief that it is ultimately out of love and for our own benefit. And that's probably a side note, but there's a lot in that film about spells, about language, symbolism. But I'm interested to hear I know you said you haven't seen it yet, but I'm interested just to know what you are aware of from that film.
So I'm sure you guys may or may not be aware. Are you familiar with Jordan Maxwell's work?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, yeah, then you guys probably already know, but for the listeners out there that may not be aware, especially for a lot of the quote-unquote light workers, I mean, that are pretty much afraid of the dark and won't want to look in the shadows for information, which is why things are occulted in the first place, because occult simply means hidden. Doesn't mean dark, doesn't mean black magic, doesn't mean evil, doesn't mean any of those perceptions of what the word means. The word means to hide, which is why people occult information in the first place, to get people to be afraid to look at it. So don't go looking in the dark. No, don't be afraid of the dark. Don't go looking in the dark, because you might actually learn how everything works if you go looking in the dark. But so what Jordan explains is, and anyone can look up this research for themselves, is there is an ancient druidic priesthood which comes from, again, Cana Phoenicia, which is where all of this stuff comes from. Our whole system is an ancient. It's not a new world order. It's an old world order. It's the ancient priesthood of the elites, which is El-ites, Elites, those who worship El, who is the god of ancient Cana Phoenicia. And so this priesthood of druids.
Is this the Hollywood?
Yeah, exactly. They have the magic wand made of the holly wood, which was the wood of the holly tree, which is so that's why Hollywood has to they have to show us they have to show us this reality. They have to show us how the Matrix, how all of these things, how the spells work. They have to show it right out in the open, right in front of our face, so that we can clearly see it, so that we get the message. So number one, so that it's not going against universal law, because they have to tell us what they're doing in order for it to actually manifest in reality, or will manifest in reality, however you want to see it. But
there's also the legal aspect of that, is that it's giving us notice, and through our acquiescence at not arguing the point, we are acquiescing basically through silence.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just another aspect why they have to tell us what they're doing. And they have to. So the best way to do that is to do it right out in the open, to where everyone can see it. And the best way to do that is through the media, through the music, the pop culture, the symbolism. The movies, especially the movies, because, for example, like the newest one, Interstellar, which was fucking epic, and I mean, just the allegories and the symbolism in there is. I mean, I'm about to make a whole video telling the truth about, what Interstellar was about. But so they tell us these things right in the open. Number one, so that when we see it and other people start, hearing that information in the mainstream, that they'll either just brush it off as, oh, you just watched too many movies, or, or to where, they see it and they're like, oh, well, I just saw that in the movie. Yeah, man, you watch too much science fiction. So that's why they put it right out in the open, is so that when people see the truth, they will either dismiss it, or they just won't fully grasp, won't fully comprehend what the message is being portrayed.
I think it's really hard for people to understand the concept of hidden in plain sight, because they look at secrets and they would say a common response would be, well, if they don't want us to know it, why is it right there in front of my face? I mean, what great way to get people to dismiss things. We just watched that video about Jordan Maxwell and the Hollywood thing a few days ago. So really interesting synchronicity that you brought that up. But what I really like is you're giving so many examples, really good examples, and breaking down words as you say them. I actually found this website in preparation for this conversation. It's called trickbythelight.com, and there's this one part. Let me just read it real quick to kind of further illustrate some of what we're talking about here, that kind of goes in line with some of the stuff that Jordan was saying. It's about books. It says, books contain chapters. What is a chapter? A chapter is a secret society or religious order, like the Knights Templar. A chapter contains many pages. What is a page? A page is an understudy and in service to the king and queen, as in pages and squires, a knight who is well versed in magic and is more or less a soldier or trained assassin. To page someone is to summons them. Pages summons demons to enslave or imprison our souls. After all, a page does contain many sentences. A jail sentence is served in a prison ward, and indeed a sentence is created by words that are spelled out by using letters. A letter is someone who allows something to happen, or someone who does something for someone else, like a blood letter. Then think back to your first type of variation of language and writing as a kid. What do they teach you how to write in? Cursive. What's the root word there? Curse. I mean, the rabbit hole is just so deep, and I don't know how you couldn't be fascinated by this stuff. I see why you are, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Have all of y'all seen the little 11-minute video that I did called "The Truth About English: Phonics, Phonetics, and Etymology"?
No, not yet.
Oh wow! If y'all haven't seen that, I posted it. I mean, it's gone viral all over like Facebook, and it's gotten a lot of hits on YouTube as well. It's basically a compilation. Like I had heard all this stuff from various different sources: Santos, Jordan Maxwell, Sivan Bomar, Christopher Lord, True Theory, House of Wisdom. So what I did was I just, and also Laurel Erica. So I just compiled them all together and sort of, wrote my own little poetry and little word, sort of did my own word magic with it, and explain how it, where it comes from, how it originates, and how it's used in commerce in order to, keep us enslaved in this system of commerce through the birth certificate and the legal system and the court system, and how it all ties together: the language, the symbols, the sounds, the phonics, and basically how this whole, we're tricked by the light, which meaning from that song, we are blinded by the light, meaning that it's right in front of us, and the light is so bright that we can't even see what is right in front of us. So that's what this, whole like Illuminati, meaning the enlightened ones, or illumination, comes to and refers to. Lucifer, meaning the light bringer, the light bearer, which refers to Venus, which is the morning star, or the evening star, which is the same as Lucifer, who is also considered the word itself, not any of these religious perceptions that are painted to control our perception, but the word itself means light, means light bringer, light bearer, means morning star, which is Venus. So Venus is Lucifer. So for anyone is stuck in religious connotations, no, but yeah, so they put it, it's all right in front of us. But that's also, it's a very good video. I'll make sure and send to y'all so y'all can check that out.
Yeah, I'd love to include the link in the description.
Definitely. Yeah, I'll send you the link real quick. But yeah, and also I could go ahead and read it for you if you would like.
Oh, I'd love it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
How do I begin to invite you on this journey? Is it by telling you about how we've been unwittingly cast into the mold of ancient spells from which we get our modern spelling? Cast just like a mold, or perhaps like a net, while caught like fish in the net of spells and spelling which have been cast, thus sentencing us to life sentences and the curses of this cursive, which are just terms, like serving a prison term. So we've been sentenced to the wards of these words, which can be deadly as swords if misunderstood. Or perhaps you missed the understanding of my terms, or possibly the sibyls of my syllables, or even the ancient rites of modern writing. We languish in our languid language in anguish ever since the ancient times of the English Angus, and the phony phonetic phonics of the ancient Phoenician Phoenix. How is it that we've been cast into this mold of spelling? Could it be, possibly, a form of government? From the Latin root govern, to control, and ment or mentalis, meaning mind, to control the mind, as government. English, as a tool of phonic phonetics by the phony Phoenician Phoenix, reflects the creativity and cunning genius of the human race, which of course is not a race at all unless you're just another rat caught in this daily maze of this rat race, of this human race, against one another. We draw money from our banks, which are the edges of a river, which flows in currents to the sea, which is why it's called currency, because cash flows, like pyroclastic ash flows, to the sea, which is why we can trace back our roots of modern trade to the ancient Phoenician trade roots, and why our mundane weekdays seem to keep us in a perpetually weak days, until we are so weakened that we barely make it to the weekend. So each day we routinely awake in the morning, which is a Monday morning ritual, conversely conversing a morning at awake for the dead. And thus the Bible speaks that the dead shall walk the earth. So it appears that they already are, without even knowing it. just by the strange language of which they know not the true origins and what their words mean in etymology. And thus the significance and the signs of the sins in signification of their signatures on these dead legal fictions, such as IDs, mortgages, or mortgages, meaning death pledge, bills, etc. Because our citizenship begins when we board the citizen ship, which sails the high seas carrying the seamen, and it all begins when the male ship docks in the female slot or slip, also known as its berth, and unloads the cargo or the seamen which sail up the waters of the canal. So she then gets pregnant and now carries the precious cargo and will give birth to the new citizen, which must now register to board that citizen ship and repeat the cycle all over again until the citizens catch on to the ancient spells of phony phonetic Phoenicians, tools of commerce and piracy of the high seas, and the human commodity through the use of their made-up language, which gives us our modern English. It's my honor to extend to you an invitation into etymology esoterica grammatica, or the study of root meanings of esoteric spelling, and discussing the topic of philosophia. Philo, the love of, and sophia, wisdom.
Holy moly! That.
How do I stand up and applause for that?
Oh my god!
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Bravo! No wonder that thing went viral.
Go ahead. Consider the language misspelled.
That was brilliant. Okay, you have to send me the link to that so I can share that.
Yeah, will do. Most people that, well, not most people, but a select few of people that will see that are like, this guy is on drugs, and I'm like, I can explain, I can break it down further if you would like, on a level that you definitely won't be able to understand, but...
Yes.
You know, there's too many people that fall into the category right now on the planet of don't know, don't care. And that's our biggest challenge in getting to where we all know we're headed and where we're gonna go.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go for it, man.
I've found that the reason most people have never, well, the reason they've never heard this, and the reason they refuse to acknowledge it, or let alone go actually study it and look further into it, is it all comes down to time. We all know this. None of us have time to study any of this stuff. We're too busy with our daily routine, our going through the rat race of this daily maze, which is what I explained, and which is the whole inspiration for that whole composure. There was the fact that nobody has time to study these things. And that's the con of man right there, is the illusion of time, which is, to consume all of our time by not having these resources to be able to access this information and for everyone to study it. So when we free up our time to be able to learn and study these things, that's when, the world awakens, is when we all have the time to be able to do that.
Colin, haven't you gotten the memo, man? All the answers to life can be seen on CNN at 5 o'clock every day.
No research required.
Yeah.
But I've actually come across too many people for it to be a comfortable situation, who honestly, they've had their eyes opened to one or many of the doors into the rabbit warren and have made a choice. They feel like they have a choice. I can either stay in 3D, stay asleep, stay in the matrix, maintain my lifestyle, maintain the few luxuries that I've managed to accumulate, stay in the career that I have and the status and everything that goes with it, or I can give all of that up and be true to passion, knowledge, being awake, and basically giving myself a whole new career in researching and waking up. And it feels like a really distinct, clear choice to them, because they look at someone, I guess, like me, who has been down this road for a very long time and committed myself publicly to it for 5 years now, who, you know, doesn't have the luxuries, doesn't have the income, doesn't have all of those things that they look at me and go, well, if I've got to do what you're doing, I can't do it. You know, and I'm not prepared to sacrifice what I've gained in the 3D in order to pursue any of this knowledge. I find that far too common.
Well, I think it's a combination of that, Lisa, combined with the fact that the truth scares people shitless. If 9/11 can be a phony attack set forth by the very people that claim to run this country, if that is a possibility, then I don't want to know the truth, because it's way too fucking scary.
But how often does the choice to not want to know the truth come down to the fact that you know you'll have another choice to make, to do something about it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, even something as mundane as whether or not your spouse is having an affair on you. People choose not to know for sure, because they know then that they will have to make a choice. And it's going to be a hard choice. And it's going to involve sacrifice, disruption to their lives, all of that sort of thing. So I'd rather just not know. And that attitude can carry on everywhere, in all aspects of life.
Well, I mean, that even rolls over, and Colin, you mentioned it before. You know, your so-called light worker friends that are saying that you spend too much time in the shadows. I know that criticism, because I get it too, and I've gotten it in the past. And so that even after people quote unquote wake up, there's still a lot they don't want to look at. And you know, it's really easy. I think part of the conditioning of the light worker movement and the hijacking of the light worker movement and the New Age movement is to, you know, create a bunch of light worker zombies that don't want to look into the shadows because they're being fed the concern that if you look too deep in the shadows, you're putting too much energy into it, and you are manifesting that reality. I actually used to believe that, and it took me a while to get over that illusion, because fact of the matter is that in order to be able to create true change, we have to be able to look at the hardest pieces of the puzzle. But we do so, there's a fine line between raising awareness around what exists and being a fearmonger around that same issue. And the way that you speak, Colin, I mean, I don't sense any fear in you whatsoever. And the information that you put out, it's clearly not fear driven. So I think even in this community of let's just call it awake and aware, beings that have kind of graduated into higher levels of truth, there's still a lot of misconceptions that need to be overcome in order for us to be able to continue to evolve as a species.
Well, I think what we're speaking to is there's a fine line. We still have a very large community of light workers that are really still following a religious dogmatic path. They've just adopted a certain way of being. Yet, if we go back to what you mentioned earlier, Cullen, we have got to go within ourselves to really understand this path and find the self-empowerment that creates the change. And I think once we have the knowing inside, we're a very different kind of light worker. then we are embracing all of it, and we are addressing it through our self-responsibility.
Yeah, you know, I keep thinking that the truth is often found within the paradox. And you just mentioned those two statements, Brian, that, you know, don't think about or give any energy to things you don't want, because you're feeding it and you're bringing it into the world, or you're prolonging its death. All these things that we've said before, you're feeding something. And that feels like a really true statement. Don't give energy to things that you don't want. The paradox of that is you can only dispel the darkness by shining a light on it. That also feels incredibly true.
Exactly.
So that seeming paradox, the truth, I guess, lies somewhere in the middle.
Exactly. It's that 0 point in the center.
Yes.
That's the only point of balance between everything. And I mean, you'll see that that theme, that recurring theme, and that is the ultimate truth, is the balance. I mean, it's the yin yang. It's the left and the right hemisphere of the brain, where the pineal sits directly smack in the center of it, the 0 point, the center. And I mean, that's ultimately what all these symbols, all the ancient teachings, this recurring theme over and over again is all about the balance in the center, you know, which is why the elites, the Elites, and the Cana Phoenicians, their color is purple, which is a royal color. It was the ancient color of royalty, because the color purple, and you can relate this to the crown chakra, is also, it's the blending of the red and the blue. It's the red and the blue pill that you take both pills, the red and the blue pill, and that gives you the purple, which is it's the Trinity, it's the trine, it's the triangulation, you know, of the two physical eyes. Triangulate that with the third spiritual eye, and that's when you can actually locate your true point in reality, your true point in space and time. Like a GPS needs 3 coordinates in order to triangulate your location in the world. And so that's what the Trinity is in all of these religions and all of these spiritual teachings. And so yes, it's all about the balance. It's all about that center point, the 0 point, the still omnipresent balance of the center.
I met a girl. This is an amazing story. Before we went to the festival at Boom at the campground, and she was writing a paper on her. She was digging into her shadow side. She wanted to understand her shadow side, her dark side, and she was embracing it as if it was a part of her that she didn't want it to deny. She wanted to understand it. And I thought that was brilliant. She wasn't privy to a lot of the stuff that we're talking about now, or on this track of going down the rabbit hole. It was just through her own observation of self. And it's like when people are struggling, if they come to me and ask me to help support, you know, their understanding of what it is they're going through. For me, it boils down to 2 words: resistance and acceptance. You know, if we look at this reality and we can accept the fact that we are creators of everything in our existence, everything being of light and everything being of dark and everything in between, all shades of gray. Are we going to accept our reality, or are we going to resist our reality? And if we can accept our reality and accept that we are all dark and light beings within ourselves, because we are all part of the same creation, then we have the ability to ride the wave and the ebbs and flows of light and dark, while we intentionally put our energy into that which we want to create, which of course is more light and more positive. But that doesn't come by denial of the dark. It comes as a result of total acceptance.
Exactly. Yeah, but also not, you know, taking it lying down either. So there's the balance as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I was part of a conversation at my time, like 2 o'clock this morning, which was not that long enough ago, and it was I don't know what you would call it, an intel call, I guess, and the evidence seems to be coming in thick and fast that an acquiescence is taking place within the system itself. And due to the acceptance of the inevitability of the closure of this particular experiment / timeline / whatever. And to me, I mean, we talk about the awakening being exponential, and you know that for me it's absolute confirmation, and you know you're really getting somewhere when within the system itself is the evidence of that. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more, whatever we want to call them, whistleblowers or, you know, those from within, starting to reveal more and more of this kind of information. And burying your head in the sand or putting it in a too hard basket or being too afraid is not going to be an option, because there's not going to be anywhere else to turn. The distractions that have bombarded our lives in order to make sure we didn't see this stuff are going to start dwindling, I think, in comparison, and it just won't be an option anymore. So I would say, you know, take a deep breath and bravely go where you have not gone before, because one way or another I think you're going to have to go there, whether it's about the language or any other aspect to the rabbit hole and to the reality of the matrix that we are in, because it's crumbling, and eventually you're going to see through.
So in essence, we're talking about our comfort zone and the fear of change. And so as things fall away, our comfort zones are going to get challenged, and then we're going to start looking for the rabbit hole.
I mean,
I think the rabbit hole's going to find
really
us.
All ties back into the.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it really ties back into this whole concept of contrast. I mean, what types of situations are usually the result of a massive awareness and expansion? It's usually situations of great contrast, where there's suffering or there's some kind of a struggle or a dispute or something perceived to be terrible happens. You fall on your face, and as a result, you pick yourself up, shake yourself off, and then all of a sudden, voila, you're more aware. And you know, that's why polarity and duality, if harnessed, are two of the greatest tools that we have at our disposal of truly getting to a point where we can understand more about the true nature of our own existence. And that's a process. It's a process that takes a lot of time for some, and for others like Colin, you know, you were like me, man. You got a taste, and what it did was it sparked a craving, and you know, with the new level of awareness, it just came, you know, wanting to know more. And you feel just like me, and I think a lot of us who listen to this, the more aware we are, the more empowered we feel. And the more empowered we feel, the faster we can grow, and the faster we can get to the point in our own self-development where things start to make a lot more sense. But it is a process, and everybody has their own individual one, and some happens a lot faster for some than it does others. That's for dang sure.
Well, Khan's got another piece he can read for us, which is Dimensions of Contradiction.
Yeah, this is, I feel, one of the most underlying, quintessential, recurring themes that I keep getting with a lot of these posts and this language related material that I keep putting out. Is a lot of people will say, well, you put this out as if it's only negative, and I'm like, well, no, you're just not seeing it through my lens. You're not seeing it from my perspective, because I don't view it as negative at all, and nor is it something to be afraid of or something, you know, containing fear within it. It's only, you know, how people react to it. So ultimately, I mean, this is the underlying theme beneath all of these things, beneath the symbols, beneath the words, the sounds, the language, this whole reality, this whole seemingly dual, well, it's not seemingly dualistic reality, it is dualistic. This reality is dualistic. The very word dimension means two. It means two. It means a dualistic principle. Same with a paradox, same with a contradiction, same with a parallel, same with a parable. All of these things mean two opposing aspects, which is the red and the blue, which is why the Illuminati's color symbolism is always red and blue, which is why all major sports logos are red and blue. Pepsi, red and blue. The winter and the summer, the two seasons of the year. The zodiac, the cycles of nature are dualistic. Day, night, light, dark, good, evil, summer, winter. It's the red and the blue. And when you put those together, that balance point in the center is the red and the blue combined to make the purple. So these are the color symbolism that you will find throughout the entire corporate world. And when you start to, in red and blue, Republican, Democrats, when you start to see these color symbols, it's called color psychology. Look up research, look up esoteric color psychology, and you'll start to see that all of these colors in the logos and the symbols, they all have a specific, they play on our emotions, like in artwork. In artwork, you know, all artists go through this quote-unquote blue phase, which is when they were depressed, which is why blue, you know, it's the color of the winter, which is when things are dying, are decaying, it's the death of the season. So this is why, you know, it's depressing. All of these DE words means, DE means downward, decline, of death, of decay, of degrade, of a demon, meaning deity of the moon, which is the nighttime, when the moon takes over from the sunlight. So they're all cycles of nature. It's all astrotheology, all of these concepts. So the dimension of contradiction, meaning die, meaning two, mention, meaning to speak, and contradiction, counter, meaning to oppose, diction, meaning to speak. So it's the countering of our speech. It's the opposing polar aspects within everything. So every letter, every word, every concept observable in language and nature holds duality or polarized aspects within them. The parallel, the paradox, the contradiction or contrary diction. Con or contra, meaning to counter or oppose. Diction meaning word, speech, to speak against. So we're talking about the dimension, meaning the die split in two. This is why we have a pair of dice. The die, meaning the split in two, like the zodiac wheel of the season. The year is split in two, summer and winter. And thus everything we define can be perceived through counter, contra, opposing, polarized, antagonistic aspects, if we happen to get conned into being divided in our beliefs. Thus, if we limit ourselves to only perceiving one of these dualistic perspectives, spec, coming from the roots speculari, to observe, this is why we have specs, as in glasses, because it relates to our sight, to observe, spec. So perspectives means per our own perception. It means our sight relating to us specifically, to look at, to view, from Latin specere, to look at, to view. So if we get limited to only seeing one of these dual perspectives, then we're missing the whole picture, the entire story, and we're only taking one side of an argument. And argue means argument. Ment is Latin for mind. So it means to argue within an argument within the mind, meaning arguing within our own minds, arguing with ourselves, essentially. Rather than balancing the scales and observing both perspectives and seeing both sides as an equal part of the whole. Day, night, summer, winter, they're all dual aspects within the whole. They are essential. Both pieces are essential to become whole. And this is exactly why the Illuminati L-lights show you the polarized duality of the polarity of nature, day versus night, sun versus moon. good versus evil, light versus life versus death, light versus dark, black and white, or red and blue, separated by white, as in the Pepsi logo or all these other logos. It's color symbolism, Republican, Democrat, Coke versus Pepsi, and this is exactly why they show you, again, the red and the blue everywhere. You'll see it everywhere you look, everywhere you turn your head. So we're talking about the cycles of astrotheology and nature. And we're also talking about the biblical Jacob versus Esau, the Cain versus Abel, Horus versus Set, Jesus versus Satan, Queen of Hearts versus Queen of Spades, as in, Alice in Wonderland. And again, back to the Hollywood symbolism. They show it all right in front of your face. It all comes from when the winter beats the summer down to death. So we're talking about the fire and ice. The red corner ready to beat the shit out of the blue corner in boxing, which is exactly why we have endless debates, which comes from Old French, débattre, originally meaning to fight, from de, the prefix de, meaning down completely, and plus battre, meaning to beat, which is where we get our word battery, as in a battery charge, meaning to beat down or to beat. So debate means to beat down to death, which is why we don't want to have debates. We don't want to beat each other down to death over seemingly differing perspectives. And so again, this is where we get battery charges from beating down, because they're just a bunch of battering rams, ramming each other endlessly for the physical prize of pride. And ain't it quaint how we administer criminal battery charges along with electrical battery charges. Thus, we would benefit from being antagonized, which etymologically means anti-agonized, or against torture, rather than being polarized and divided into dimensions of contradictions and the paradoxa of the parallels in the dual halves of the bicycle, meaning two wheels, as in the wheel within a wheel, as in Ezekiel's vision of the wheel within the wheel. So essentially, it's all about the balance. It's about the balance in the center point, and or it's about being the circumference that encompasses all aspects. It's look at this like the zodiac wheel. We are the sun at the center of the wheel, and all of those 12 aspects, or the 12 disciples, we are Jesus at the center of the wheel. We are the sun at the center of the wheel, and all of the 12 disciples, or the 12 seasons, are all aspects of ourselves. They are all personalities within ourselves. And when we fragment ourselves into each one of these different, I'm a Cancer, I'm a Pisces, that's only one aspect of our true self. We are a Fucus, the 13th warrior, which is when we rise above and we become the Christ conscious. We become the sun. We become the center point of all existence, meaning that it is all encompassed within us. We are the source of creation. Things are only created through us. The universe only experiences itself through us. We create with our hands, or our manos, which is where we get the word man, coming from manos, our hands, meaning to create. We create with our hands. We create with our voice. We give our thoughts life by speaking them through our voice. Our thoughts don't create reality. Our thoughts combined through our voice and then taken to fruition through the act of our creating it with our hands. That's what creates our reality, not just our thoughts. Our thoughts are the seed, while the voice is the water that gives that seed the nourishment, and then our attention brings it to life. So essentially, that's what it's all about. That's how we create our reality, is through these different aspects within ourselves. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Thank you for that.
Man, I'm gonna have to stand aside of my Brian Kelly rants for a while, because holy shit, man.
Yeah, you're going to have to work on him to compete with that.
Yeah, no kidding. That was a really worthy.
I'm speechless after that one. Seriously.
I know, so am I. I don't even know where to go from here. In fact, I'm going to leave it up to you, Colin. Is there anything that you think is important to cover off in the next sort of 10 to 15 minutes in the time that we have left?
Well, that's like my ultimate summary of everything. That's like the overarching theme behind like everything. That's like the thing that I leave people, to here's something to think about.
Yeah, that'll do it.
And then
something implies one thing. Yeah, there's a lot to think about in there. Many things, I'd say. What was it, Colin? I got a question for you, man.
Yeah.
What
please.
was it? 2 years. You said you've been on this path. What was it that woke you up? And then how did you stumble into, a healthy obsession? Let's just call it, with etymology.
That's a very good question. Well, what led me to ultimately my realization of what I call awakening? Well, I've been on this path my entire life, like ever since I can remember. I've been wanting, like, first, things I remember was, when I was like 3, 4, 5 years old, was I was always asking my mom, what does that say? What does that say? What does that say? Because I couldn't read yet, but I wanted to know what everything said. All of these signs that we're driving down the street, you're bombarded with all these symbols, all these images, all these signs, and I was just, what does it mean? What do all these things mean? So I kept asking my mom, and of course you get the constant response. She would read things to me. She would, oh, well, this says that, this means that, this says that, and of course. But then, as a 5-year-old, you get that age-old response, especially in our modern culture, is, the parent just gives the child that, here's a brief little explanation. Now shut up. You ask why, and they'll give you, well, because that's just why we do things. That's just the way it is. That's just why we do it. Well, why does Easter why do we celebrate Easter with bunnies and eggs and fertility symbols, and why all of these things? And of course they're I don't know. That's the common response is just, here, shut up. You're 5 years old. You just need to shut up. I don't know how reality works. I don't know why we have all these symbols. I don't know why we do the rituals that we do every year and every holiday and every season. I don't know where they come from. I don't know, that's the common response. No one knows why we do these things. But only now, like 20 some odd years later, have I come across all of the questions that I've been asking my entire life. And for me, what triggered all of the dots I had seen throughout my entire life, what drew the connections between all of them, what brought this web together, was when I watched, it happened for me in October of 2012, right before the solstice. Because the solstice was coming up, and there was all the shit on the History Channel, Doomsday Calendar, Mayan Doomsday, all the advertisements on TV. Hey, Chevy Tahoe is, it'll withstand the apocalypse. It'll withstand the 2012, end of the world. All of these, the mainstream symbols of destruction, and how it was, the end of the world and all that shit. And I knew within myself. I was like, no. There's got to be more to it than this. I'm gonna find out what it is for myself. So that's when I first started. I immediately went to my computer and I typed in 2012, and the first thing that popped up was David Wilcock's presentation called 2012 Enigma on YouTube, which was also one of the top hits on YouTube at that time. And so I watched it, and boom, instantly connected all religions, all the science, and that's what got me, was the science. Because and that's when I had this realization: holy shit, the hippies were right all along, but they couldn't explain any of it. They couldn't explain the science behind it. They couldn't explain the symbolism. They were just all about the loving and the hippie type stuff, which was all well and good, but it didn't really trigger for me. What triggered with me was the rationality, the science, the the tangible aspects to it. And so when I found the science to it, boom, that's when I started just stuff just started falling in my lap. And once I started looking, I realized that the truth was already out there. It was just deliberately hidden from me. And that's what really, first I got pissed off. Not because it affected me emotionally. I got pissed off because I had never been told these things my entire life. No one ever made it their life's purpose to come out and tell me that these things. No one ever told me about Nikola Tesla. No one ever told me about, about any of these things. And I had been seeking my entire life, and no one told me. Not only did they not tell me, they actively wanted me to never find out. And when I realized that, I decided in that instant, I was like, this is my life's purpose, is to make sure that I tell everybody who is willing to listen, and even if they're not willing to listen, they better sit down and shut up for a moment and at least hear me out. And if they choose to ignore it and live in ignorance of it, meaning ignorance is not stupidity, it's just the willful denial of something that you hear, and the refusal to go and actually look into it yourself. So whether people like what I'm saying or not, whether they care about it or not, I don't care. At least they are getting the chance to hear it. Everyone has the right to, as you guys always say, is full transparency. The only crime in this universe is withholding information deliberately, because we all are putting this puzzle together, and if anyone is holding their piece of the puzzle because they think it'll piss someone off, or because they're afraid of how someone is going to react to their unique piece that is vital to putting this puzzle together, if someone loses their piece or is deliberately hiding the piece of the puzzle, then the puzzle never gets finished, does it? Because, so it's all of our duty to express everything that we know, to put all of our knowledge on the table, to have all information, access to all information, whether it's considered light, dark, good, bad, ugly, whatever. The good, the bad, and the ugly. I want all of it. I want to know all of it. Because only then can I make my true choice of what is true and what is not. If something is hidden, then we don't ever have that ability to choose whether something is true or whether it's just hearsay. So that's ultimately, my whole endeavor here.
Well, I appreciate everything you just said, but where's the passion, man?
I just want to tell you, I love you. I'm so in love right now. You're amazing, absolutely amazing, and
Colin is a farmer. He's out there planting seeds.
Yep.
Yeah, I plant seeds.
And that's such a crucial role at this time, to just say, fuck it, I don't give a shit if you want to smell my flowers. I'm gonna plant the damn seeds anyways. Yep. And you know what's funny thing about planting seeds, man, is sometimes all it takes is one little tiny one. You say one little thing and people shut you out, and then something happens later in life and they realize, holy shit, there was something there, and then that seed grows, and then where it goes from there, no one knows. But that's brilliant, everything that you just shared, man. I'm with you 150%.
I got a personal question for you, though. Say 2 years ago, when you started talking about this stuff, I'm going to assume at this point that there was probably resistance from people within your own circle, within your own life. 2 years down the track, have any of them come full circle yet and said, man, that thing you told me about a couple of years ago? Has that happened?
Well, surprisingly enough, when people get into this, sharing of truth and on the path to finding truth, we all hear and see a lot of people expressing how hard it is. No one's listening. No one's paying attention. Everyone's still asleep. No one wants to wake up. All those expressions, which are very defeatist expressions. And although yes, ultimately, it is difficult for a lot of people to accept. I haven't actually seen any of that resistance. When I command my will, when my will be done, things move out of the way. Obstacles move out of the way. Things clear the way for you to, for your path to go forward. And I feel I've also written a pretty cool article about that. I call it the quadrivium of truth, and the 4 stages I feel of truth would be, at least in my opinion, in my perspective, is depending on one's own level of mental or spiritual fortitude and or awareness. Number 1, stage 1 of truth. The truth will scare the shit out of you, being manifestations of that being cognitive dissonance, or even a type of psychotic shock. I'm sure we've all seen, different examples of people, going through cognitive dissonance, or even a type of psychotic shock when you present them with a type of information. And which is why I'm so passionate about what I do. And I'm a very argumentative person. At least I'm just very passionate about I don't care if people accept. I don't want them to accept what I'm saying. I don't want them to agree with me. I just want them to be able to see I want them to be able to see my perspective. I don't care if they agree with it or not, as long as they're open to at least hearing me out and seeing my perspective. That's all I care about. So number 1, stage 1, the truth will scare the shit out of you. Stage 2, the truth hurts, being an emotional response to it. Either it scares us, or either it makes us feel uncomfortable. It stirs up all of these emotions within us. And stage 3, the truth shall set you free, being manifestations, being spiritual union, free thinking, and radical individuality. Meaning, you start to, as you guys, said about me, you just don't give a shit what people think anymore, because the grander reality is we're in a place where it's not about being politically correct anymore. It's about the big picture. It's about whether people like it or not. There's too much at stake here to not bring these things to awareness. It's too important. There's too much at stake to stay ignorant. Whether they choose to or not, they're gonna see it start to confront them from all different angles. And that's when people ultimately awaken, is when they'll hear something once, they'll be like, oh, that's bullshit. Oh, that's conspiracy theory. Oh, that's blah, 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 blah. I'm not gonna, nana, blah, 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 plugging their ears and covering their eyes or whatever. But then they'll see it from a second source. Then they'll be like, I still think that's bullshit. But then they'll hear it from a third and 3 completely unrelated sources. Again, that's the triangulation. That's the Trinity. Once you see 3 completely unrelated sources all telling you the same thing, then boom, you have a transformation. You have something triggers within you, and then people wake up and they accept. They not accept, but they acknowledge, meaning they realize that it's there and they allow it, credence to exist. And stage 4, I would say the highest or the largest perspective is truth becomes hilarious. You're the observer. You're the director. You achieve mastery. It's everything is a divine comedy. That's when you get into that Alan Watts mentality, that Terence McKenna mentality, that George Carlin mentality, the Bill Hicks, you are the comedian, you are the artist, you are the director of your own play, of your own life, and everything becomes hilarious, especially the mainstream news. It's no longer it's fear porn, it's fear propaganda, but you can see it and you laugh at that shit because it's so ridiculous. You see them, you know, on every single news channel. Conan O'Brien, you know, blah blah blah. They repeat that one like over, like 1,000 times over. It's hilarious.
Show host Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late night television.
Well, Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late night television. Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late night television. Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late night television. Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope once again on late night TV. Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late night television. Conan O'Brien is looking to push the envelope on late night television. Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late night TV. Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late night television. Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late night television. Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late night television. Conan O'Brien may be prepared to push the envelope.
You know, it's no longer something to fear. All of these illusions, the Ebola, Ebola, you know, whatever it is at that moment of time, it's nothing to fear. It becomes a joke. It becomes one big joke. And I mean, that's even all the stuff that I like. That's why a lot of people will think that, you know, the information that I share, they'll consider it. Oh, well, that's very. You talk about Illuminati a lot. You talk about Freemasonry a lot. You must be living in fear of it. You must be scared of that. No, you are scared of it if you think I'm scared of it. I'm sharing all this because it's hilarious. It's a joke, and I'm trying to expose the fraud, expose the lie. It's you know, I say this and people, you know, get offended, but I don't care. We're here to offend people. That's how people change is by I'm here to deliberately offend people.
But you're saying you're not scared of the boogeyman, and you know that makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. We are not here to make people comfortable. Well, the people that are very disturbed, yes, we're comforting the disturbed, but we are disturbing the comfortable. I mean, again, that's the contradiction that we find balance within. You know. We're about achieving balance. So,
dude, you need a radio show.
Yeah, we'll talk. We are going to talk for sure.
I would like to. You know, I've considered like doing my own radio show or whatever, but I believe it or not, I actually don't like talking that much. Like I really don't like talking. I just like being quiet and like.
Could have fooled me.
And I really like listening. Like, I just want to, you know, study.
Truth be told, I don't like talking either.
Yeah, so. Yeah, truth be told. No, Brian, can't hardly get a word out of him. It's like pulling teeth.
I can't tell you how just wrapping it up with everything you just said is the perfect cap on the entire conversation. Because we've fallen into this pit of taking things way too fucking seriously. And to be able to see the humor and the joke and all of it is the key to our salvation, as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. To be able to shake it all off and laugh hysterically. You know, I've shared the story many times about being losing my business and being in my house with no electricity and getting ready to get kicked out on the street and cooking pancakes by candlelight because I got no electricity and getting to the point, I'm eating my pancakes with the flashlight, and telling the story, and people are thinking, "Wow, you must have been in despair and depression." And while I'm eating those fucking pancakes, man, I laughed my ass off at how ridiculous my life had become, and how funny it was. And I swear to God, that was like a turning point in my entire existence, was to see the comedy that was veiled by what would perceive to be despair. And it changed at that point, because I realized that there's nothing about this life that needs to be taken too seriously. Nothing. So, dude, bravo to you, man, for getting to that point. And I think that there's going to be a lot of people that they're going to listen to this, and they might not understand most of the shit you said, but once to this point, I mean, it doesn't take a wordsmith to be able to grasp, you know, the kind of that position, and it doesn't take you a long time to get there. So, kudos to you, man, because that's a powerful message. To just take a step back, stop being freaked out. You know that the New World Order and, you know, Agenda 21 and, you know, the Illuminati is you know, taking over, and the banking crash, and you know, it's just like, yeah, look around you and there's a million things to freak out about, but is it really necessary to freak out about any of them? I mean, it's not when you look at it from that perspective, and that's valuable, man.
Well, this is absolutely a show I am going to listen to over and over and over again. I really want to have the data that you shared within my being so that I can articulate it as well.
Yeah, definitely. I do the same. I go through and I read because like it's like a form of channeling, but like not really. When I come to these like it'll start with me with one little word. I'll look up one word in an online etymology dictionary or whatever, and I'll start writing about it, and all of a sudden it takes a life of its own. It starts becoming this, mind-blowing article that, it blows my own mind. So I go back and I read my material like over and over and over again. And what the thing about this is you can find new gems, new perspectives, new understandings every single time. And that's why I love getting into language and symbolism, and because I mean a picture paints 1,000 words, as they say, and letters are pictures, letters are pictographs. So a letter literally paints 1,000 words, and each letter, portrays its own universes contained within it. Especially Egyptian hieroglyphics literally contain so many understandings within them that, I mean, it's mind-blowing each time you go back and look at it. And especially if I started getting into the breakdowns of how our English alphabet comes from Paleo-Hebrew alphabet, which comes from Phoenician alphabet, and how each letter tells a story. Like, for example, the letter B is the house of it. B means bet, and B comes from Hebrew bet, meaning house. And what it is it's the house of the goddess. Because if you look at the letter B, it's the symbol of a pregnant woman. It's the breast viewed from the side with the pregnant belly. Or it's the breast viewed from above, being the two mounds, so that's just an esoteric meaning of the letter B right there within itself. And I mean, I could go into I don't know all the letters yet, but I'm working through it. I know the letter A, which is the air symbol. It's the truncated pyramid, being the symbol for the Illuminati, the truncated pyramid. So that's what the letter A is. It comes from the pictograph of a bull's head, which is why they worship the bull. So yeah, I could go on and on and on and on and on. But, I mean, that's neither here nor there.
And I think you should be given plenty of opportunities to go on and on and on, personally. But I want to thank you for joining us at short notice, as I said, and educating us and illuminating us to such a degree. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, also, real quick, for anyone that wants to, go through all of these articles, all of the, the videos, all of the stuff, information that I've shared, I've already posted it all. It's on my page on Facebook, called Lifting the Veil. I think there might be a couple Lifting the Veil pages, but you'll know mine when you see it. It's, it covers etymology, language, symbolism, free energy, 0-point technologies, all kinds of aspects of truth. So yeah, stop by there. That's like my sanctuary. I don't do this by myself. Everyone else is invited. Again, we all have our own pieces to add, and that's how I come to these realizations, is from people from other countries that speak different languages and have something. They're like, oh, did you know this? And I'm like, oh, I didn't. So I add that into my, into the information, and all of a sudden, it takes life on its own. That's what we're here to do, is to, uncut, to put this puzzle together, all by our, by coming together and sharing, our information together. So it's an open forum. Come to, my Facebook page, Lifting the Veil. My personal page is Made Manifest, or it's actually now Cullen Smith, because they made me change my name back, because a fascist book, But I also have a website.
Well, Colin, I want to personally thank you for not only for coming on and sharing with us, but for your passion and your commitment, man. It's admirable how much you've invested your energy into seeking and sharing truth. And if there was a million more just like you, we would be pulling out of this mess a lot sooner, I assure you. So keep up the good work, man, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you again here real soon.
So
Thank
grateful to you. So very grateful to you, Colin. And just really admire your perspective and your strength and courage. Thank you.
Thank you, Blue Star. Thanks, Brian. Thank you, Lisa.
Well, it's quite the love fest now, isn't it? Yeah. Again, thank you from me too. And we will be talking soon, I'm sure. So thanks again, everybody. See you next week for the Collective Imagination Show. And have a great week. Bye for now.